This meeting of the Beverly Hills Board of Education is called to order at 5 p.m. We're in open session. Mrs. Krashauer, would you kindly lead us in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Margot.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Hacker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Superintendent, is there a report of closed session action?
President Spitz, there was no action in closed session.
Thank you. This is the agenda hearing period for public comment. Is there anybody here from the public that wishes to address the board? Seeing none, the agenda hearing period is closed. And we are in our agenda at item 8, staff presentations. Dr. Bregy.
Okay. I know that came up so quick. So I do have some materials to pass out for you, and I do want to extend a thank you for getting some assistance with the screen over here to the right. We're trying to make some improvements with opportunities for the board, not only in hard copy, but also in presentation form as well. So here's a copy of the presentation for tonight. It's in two forms.
Did you take the one that was here?
Otherwise, there's an extra one right here.
Here you are.
Thank you. So I'd like for you to please refer to the packet that you have in front of you that has future-focused schools on the front. So this presentation is in anticipation of some work that's yet to come that we've been talking about for quite a few months. Before any of our presentations, we always start off with our mission statement. It's our responsibility as staff to prepare each of our students to be contributing citizens in a global economy, and it's very important to ensure that this type of roadmap is always laid out before us before we start making important decisions in the school district. So just to give you some background, if you look at the top left portion of the screen here, after about 9 days of being in the district, I gave a presentation to the school board about making reductions in the district at about $5 million to our general fund. We followed up with a presentation on the 16th and then also the 28th. So that was a really busy month where we reached out and had some conversation about how we could do this. We had a great difficulty doing this. We reached out to the board. We talked about how in such a short time this would be difficult with a new administration because of the impact that this would have on student learning and student programs. So what I thought was unique by giving 3 comprehensive presentations in February, I learned soon from staff that this was not that unique, that this was something that was done every year. There was a cycle of presentations about budget reductions over the years and a target amount, and then that amount was never reached, but then as needs went by, we started adding staff again. And so what I realized from many of the staff members after we gave those presentations, they said this has been a really consistent cycle, that this happens every year. And it's draining on the climate and morale of the district, but this is something that the district has gone through for approximately the last decade. So just a quote by Piaget that I think is important that helps set the tone for this presentation. The principal goal of education is to create men who are capable of doing new things, not simply repeating what other generations have been done, and men who are creative, inventive, and discoverers. And I think that that's really important, connects with the pattern of what's been happening in this school district, which gives me great pause and great reflection about how we move forward in the future, because things need to change. That cycle needs to change. So I start the conversation with a call to action that the cycle of uncertainty in the district needs to change, but we can do that by improving structures and supports in the school district in how we are actually delivering our educational programs. We have a high number of staff relative to our enrollment. We are on an unsustainable financial path, which I will shortly show you again, and that there have been considerable reductions that have made over the years, and that refers back again to that cycle. And are we at a tipping point? That how many more years do we continuously stand up and keep asking for reductions of the general fund, only then to start giving back and adding people when we need them? So last year, we weren't able to come up with the $5 million, but we did come up with over $1 million, and we did ask the board late February to take a different approach. And I was really very excited as a new superintendent coming in that the Board of Education was willing to give us a shot and give us some time. So we didn't have to make the $5 million worth of cuts. So it was really impressive as a new superintendent coming in that our board was willing to take a different approach. In other words, the approach that we started with in February, those presentations, that was a very top-down approach. We were asked as administration to come up with our recommendations, and then the board would then take action. And the bottom-up approach, which is inevitably what the board had agreed upon, which we were thrilled, is that we wanted to take some time to work and meet with the community. I knew that we'd have a new cabinet for the most part, and that we wanted to be able to tap into that broader community, people that have kids in our schools, that don't have kids in our schools, people that also went to our schools, just a mixed stakeholder group. So we're excited that we were given that opportunity, and that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. In the best world, in a design thinking kind of way, it's important that we engage not only one another, because it's important that we engage our own staff and our own parents, but to also educate them before we start executing and making decisions. So this type of feedback loop, is the way I look at this, is a great way to ensure that we are continually talking about the work that we're doing, and that we try to include as many people as possible. So I know the word reconfiguration, it means so many things to different people. And so there are a lot of the RE words, the repositioning, refocused, reimagined, redesigned, reinvent. But bottom line is we're really talking about our future-focused schools. What do we want our schools to look like in the future? And so I know this is difficult to see. We'll have this uploaded very, very quickly to you, but for the online. So the Board of Education has this, and I just want you to look at a couple of things that's important before we go further. And this certainly isn't the main driver here, but I think it's important that this plays a pivotal part in our decision-making as we move forward. So the green is that green bar is the revenue that we have coming in as a school district, and that kind of turquoise blue is our expenses. And so when the cabinet and I met, we did talk about this kind of mathematical representation about revenues and expenditures. And when we first look at this, that picture between the green and the blue really doesn't look like that's that problematic. Doesn't look like it's that critical, but we wanted to add something onto this so that people really got a better understanding of what happens year to year. And it's this compounding effect. So as you can see, the red, and we had that outlined there, is that we are considerably putting ourselves further in debt. going from just under $1 million to over $5 million, which then doubles to $10 million. And so this really puts us in a very critical financial health situation. And this is something that, as I talked about in the beginning, the opening, this is what's been happening. This is what happens. And so cuts are made and then cuts are added back in. And so this is this cycle that we really need to get ahead of and we really need to look at. And we have this once in a lifetime opportunity in front of us. Here's another depiction of our general fund, which is green. And you can see that is at about, the just under $1 million for this year. And then also that blue part is our reserve fund. And we are, according to our board policy, we have to have 3% of our general fund in our reserve fund. And that kind of, I call it a death cross, really, when you start to see that your general fund is depleting quickly. And I don't know if you can see it, but in the middle there, we should probably use a different color, is that zero line. So, we dip below breaking even, we already have. So this is a very big concern as we move forward, and these types of projections will be providing you updates at each of our meetings that we provide you with some information. So one thing that we had talked about last year is looking at a collaborative experience with a mixed stakeholder group to collaborate together as a cabinet, superintendent's cabinet, and then also a mixed stakeholder group so that we can begin to look at what are those viable options for our school district as it relates to how we're configured, the type of instruction that we're delivering, because certainly that is the driver, is this opportunity. And you're going to hear a little bit shortly from Mr. Seaman as he talks about some of our assessments and how we're being measured as a school district. And the fun thing for us is this opportunity to be able to truly tie in how our students are being measured with the future of our schools. And is there something that we can do to make those improvements? And there is. But we certainly want to get some buy-in. I want to assure people that even though this is the charge to develop these viable options, that there is no plan that's been developed that's hiding in a desk drawer. This is really going to be an authentic process. I have a lot of new cabinet members, along with myself, in month 8, and this will be an authentic process from the very beginning. So we're very excited about it. The cabinet will be supporting every step of the way because we are representing different expert areas in our fields. So before the work begins, it was important for us to get your feedback tonight. So we haven't sent anything out yet. We're pretty much ready to go, but we want to get some feedback from you after this presentation. We are looking to form a very productive, a very strong team, mixed stakeholder group, and we want to be able to frame the scope of our work. We want to be able to be really clear about what we want at the end so that we are able to develop all kinds of options, not just one, but several options. And we know, after being in the district for a short time, that the community really values the historical information, and that's really important to us, that we get that information. A quick history, a deep history of our finances, and also our facilities and our educational programming. This is the value of the cabinet being part of the support. And then also, what we have been doing, and we have right now, is the data share. So we have, for each of our sites, the number of classrooms that we have, the size of each of the classrooms, the size, the square footage of our cafeteria space, our physical education space, a lot of those unstructured, those larger areas, those common spaces. And then also, our team will be looking at taking that data, and this is all going to happen right away, is that we really think that it's important, if we're going to be starting to talk about our schools, that we're going to take a tour, and the entire team will spend time in each school building to get a really good look and feel for not only the data that they have, but we're going to walk them through the blueprints and the classrooms, because I think that before decision making, there has to be some experience that happens, in your head about what you're talking about. You need to see it, you need to walk it. That certainly helped me as a new superintendent coming in, just walking those buildings over and over and over. So that's something that we'll do with our team. So the actual work is going to be, it's time intensive, but it's also, it's having that open mind to be able to take in new information, because the one thing that we all have, obviously, with schools and public education is that we went to one. But there are going to be people on the committee that haven't been on that inside, that operational end of the school district. It's going to be really important for people to be able to see that. So we'll be participating, carrying out the committee work, and then again, I think it's really important that the team that we select be part of the updates, so that the updates are just not coming from the cabinet, but they're also coming from people that are going to be on the team as well. There are so many educational improvements that can be made. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I think it's really important for people to get an understanding of how instruction and programming will drive our decision making. The 21st century learning opportunities, and while that becomes at times a buzzword, we are looking at school districts that are creating maker spaces and flexible learning spaces. We have amazing partnerships in our community, so if we start looking at different configurations, options, delivery models for our education or our elementary schools, it is going to be really exciting to see how things can be different, what type of options can we come up with. When we start to look at not just the data, and we start to look at what the experience is like for a student, there are really critical areas that we're going to be able to see improvement on, and that is increased opportunities for our students across all levels, opportunities for teacher collaboration, and really what's important, and this is just to give you an example of how to improve, is having a wider continuum of learners in the same building. I think of special education all the time. I talk to Ms. Chisholm all the time about some of our students that don't have that peer to reach out to, because some of our students are in a grade level, like sixth grade level with 60 students, and so they just haven't had their chance to reinvent themselves. There's just going to be all kinds of opportunities that we're going to be able to talk through as a team. So this is the exciting part for me, and I'll try to be brief, but I get so excited about this. So I gave the board members a copy of a book, and it's called This We Believe. And this is a production from, and it's the AMLE, and this is the Association for Middle Level Educators. It's kind of like the Bible for middle school education. Once you start reading this, you won't be able to put it down, because this is really what our progressive middle schools are doing. And when you think about it, this is the prep for high school and secondary learning, and this is such a critical time in our adolescents' lives. This is the second largest growth period for a child after birth is middle school, and so it's not about just social emotional. That's super important, but just also instructionally. So this is something that I'd love for you to just to start looking at a little bit more. Summer reading for you, Mr. Margot, and it's just really excellent. There are about 28 contributors that are considered to be the foremost educators in middle school level learning, and so I'm excited that I can start sharing some of this with you at our board meetings and some of these practices. Here are some of them. So the tenets of middle school philosophy, and I stopped because I want the team to do the work, but I just want to give you an idea of the tenets of middle school philosophy, and it may not be something that you're used to or that you had when you were here, but I'm talking about leading the most successful middle schools in the country have the tenets of middle school philosophy, and they're on the left-hand side here. So it's providing interdisciplinary teams in middle school so that you have a teacher that is dedicated to teaching like 8th grade math, so that they could pair up with the 8th grade ELA teacher and this 8th grade science teacher and actually work together as a team. And currently, as you know, we have a 4 middle school model right now. We have 4 middle schools in the district. And it's not possible to do this type of teaming in our middle schools. If we had a combination of some sort, that's when we are able to see more of this exploratory, hands-on, robust curriculum that's happening in our classrooms. So curricular options, and I want you just to compare. So we have 4 middle schools. We do an okay job with our curricular options. We do okay. But any combination of moving kids together so that there's more students provides an excellent opportunity for extracurricular options, the extracurricular, the flexible grouping of kids, as I just told you that story. We have a very difficult time doing that. If you have 60 kids in 6th grade, there's very few ways you can start grouping students and schedule them, which is what leads us to not having equal access to some programs in some of our middle schools. The concentration of resources to best meet our students' needs is very diminished when you have 4 middle schools. And I think that we're doing a very good job in many cases we're doing the best we can with what we have. And I think that this is just an example of some things that happens when you start to kind of reimagine and start to look at what combinations will do. It certainly improves not only opportunities for our students, but also for our teachers. And those opportunities for teachers to be in the same building, to have those collaborative experiences, not just with PD, but also on a daily opportunity. So we'll have checks and balances along the way. So we'll provide this information to you, we'll share it with you, and we'll get your feedback as you go along as we meet with this group. And just another statement about change, it does involve risk, and it's scary, but it is necessary. You know, I like to think about the work that we're doing, which is really good work with really talented staff members, but we're kind of static right now. I mean, there's just a lot more we can do with some pretty simple changes through some collaboration. So I'm going to refer back quickly to at opening day, I talked a little bit about, I wanted to give an example of 2 companies, and one of them is Blockbuster, the other is Netflix. And this is important because this is something that we can all relate to. And although, Jonathan, I don't know if you remember Blockbuster. You do? Okay. So, you know, both of those companies were in high competition with one another. And it was Blockbuster that said, you know, we're going to stick to what we know. And this is, you know, this is something that we've done over and over. We're a proven commodity in our neighborhoods, and the people like us, and they keep coming back. And you know, we're surviving as a business. And Netflix at one point almost tried to get Blockbuster to buy them. And when that didn't happen, Netflix said, okay, we don't have a buyer, so we need to change what we do. And they really started to connect with like their own customers. Just like if we connect with our own students, and I can't wait till we do that, to hear what type of learning opportunities they want. So Netflix was bold, and they said, we're gonna kind of branch out from just these VHS tapes that and we're gonna branch out and see if we can start doing some other things. So they started that mail-in service, if you remember. I mean, how awful that was, but it was like you did get something like in 2 days, and then you'd watch it and then you'd mail it back, and it worked. Right. Yeah, although I don't think that they charged you if you didn't rewind it like Blockbuster. But while that worked for them, they knew that they needed to dig a little bit deeper. They knew something else was there, and now Netflix is one of the most a premier streaming company, and it's just expanding and exploding. And it's because they took those bold moves. They took the product, they took what they had, and they started to change configurations. They started to ask people what they wanted, and education is very much the same way. It's scary, just like it was for this company. But it's the kind of step that we need to take right now is to start looking at how can we innovate what we're doing, especially at this time when we are not on a sustainable financial path. So just a quick timeline. We have an application that's ready to go. I'll show it to you in just a second. If receive some positive feedback from the board, we'll send that out tonight. We will be looking for, we'll be sending it to our staff first. I really think it's important that our staff receive information from the administration first. Then we're going to be looking at our newspapers to get the word out to our community. And that period of time will be open for this application into the 22nd of September. It will then close, and then we will begin to then look at really putting together a diverse stakeholder group for this work in front of us. The tour that I talked about is really important. You have to be there. That's going to be a mandatory date. You have to be, the people that are selected, you have to be you have to walk through all the buildings. You have to come to the data meeting. You have to know what we're working with before you start in this collaboration. And then in December, although we will be providing you with updates, as I mentioned, that's, just so you know, that's kind of what we're looking at to bring you some options as far as, some things that we looked as a committee. I will also then provide you with a superintendent's recommendation, which may be different from the committee, but I think that it's important to provide a recommendation. And then we'll have some really good conversation at the board and cabinet level about some of this work. The last slide I have here is just, we really do need to be thinking like Netflix right now. And it's not only about survival, but it's about thriving. And there's going to be obstacles in our past. There's going to be some people that don't want to change. But it's really important that we don't change that direction. We keep moving forward. And I do want to get some feedback from you, although, Eddie, if I could I just want to put up really quick for you. It's a comprehensive application process, and it's not like this on purpose. It looks much better. I created a Google form, and so it looks much better in a Google form, but this was the only way that I could print it out and show it to you. And this just gives you an idea of some of the information that we're looking for. It matters to us. We want to make sure that we have equal representation of staff members that are teaching at the primary level, at the middle school level. We even want some high school assistants as well. We are #BH1. Everyone should be involved in this process. We want people that, if you look through here, I really want people that have not been in our schools. Maybe they're in private school, but also it's important to know, like, what kind of skill set, what does somebody have to offer this group? Because this is intensive work. This is going to be, these are long hours and there's a lot of information. And so we want to make sure that we are able to get somebody who is able to have an open mind and collaborate. It's a small group, so we would just want to make sure that we're hitting every perspective, every area. And so that's why it's a really extensive application process, although quick. But it's really important that we are able to reach out, and there's no pre-selections. We're really going to spend a lot of time on these. At the end, there's some of our meeting dates. We may add more depending on the work. But I wanted you to know that we have really thought about what the next couple of months are going to look like. And we're really excited about having this conversation and working with some people that we don't even know yet, that we've not even met. So I'd love to get some feedback about the process. Any advice, suggestions?
Thank you, Dr. Bregy. May I ask for questions and comments?
Yes, I have one question, Dr. Bregy. You may have considered this already, but I was wondering how you how you anticipated getting student input on the process. And so I don't know how feasible it would be for students to be members of that committee. I don't know if that's something that the district is open to, but I was wondering if you plan to give the students themselves updates on the progress of that committee and allow students to, and not just high school students, but middle school students too, because a lot of them are really brilliant, and allow them to contribute their own thoughts to the process.
That's an excellent question, and I want you to know we've thought a lot about that, and we thought that while we have a select smaller group of numbers that are actually doing the working, we're careful not to plan everything out because we do want this to be authentic. But one of the conversations that we had was creating, once we have our team in place, talk about how do we create focus groups, because adding 1 or 2 students, if we take one, like that's not going to give us really good representation. So we think one of the best ways, but we want the team to come together first, is then reach out and have some focus groups with the community and also with our students in our schools. That would be the best way, we believe, to get some information, as well as even a survey to the entire community, because even as a board, we've had some discussion about that we had certain questions, and what a great time to do that all in a professionally research-based survey.
Great, thank you.
Just a couple observations. First, I want to just speak to the KBEV students. This is our board meeting, but it's your classroom. And you came in here and apologized for the sound going out. Never apologize. This is your classroom. This is classic 21st century education in this district. These kids had a problem. They worked through the problem, and they solved the problem. We had the sound go out for a few minutes. And that's exactly what we want to do here with 21st century education and our CTE program. So kudos to KBEV for working through the problem. That's exactly what us as adults and administrators want to see. So never apologize for working through a problem. Dr. Bregy, you've talked about the pathways. At your opening day, you showed 3 paths, routes, and the convergence of what those paths may look like. Well, you've now laid it out to us tonight. In academics, we talk about the 4 C's. You're providing us with the 4 R's. With regard to your plan, and you're showing us what it will look like. You refer to it as future-focused schools, which is really, you use the word future a lot in this presentation. And I believe you've laid out the fact that our future is bright in this district. You equated it to the light bulb with the globe. And I think that's important because that shows that we're no longer just a small little community here in Beverly Hills, but we're educating students globally. And that's an important concept. I think that's something that's been missing for the last decade here in Beverly Hills, that we have to be forward-thinking on that. And a lot of what you're laying out is important. I know you want some feedback as to your process here. So one aspect with regard to your application is to make sure that you reach out to the civic groups in the community. And why that's important, whether it's Chamber, or Rotary, or other civic organizations, the students know what we're doing here, K-12. The parents that participate in education know what we're doing here. The educators, administrators know what we're doing here. I think it's very important to incorporate the bigger, larger community, because we've, to some degree, lost their support in this district. And that's a true shame, because most of them came through this district, and they've had children in this district, and they haven't been associated with the district a long time. I think it would benefit us as a community to have that group participate in what our future looks like, because you have a lot of businesses and business personnel. When you bring up the difference between Blockbuster and Netflix, and it's important to get those community, because we do that. And the reason I bring that up is we do it in CTE. Our CTE committee, Ms. Dubin, what we're doing there, it's been crucial to that program that we have that outreach and that input from the outer community. It's made us a stronger program. It's made that program stronger. Right. So I think it would benefit the district at large. So I don't want you to overlook the greater community as well.
Great idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I approve of your message.
How Netflix evolved, how Netflix evolved. I know my voice is electrifying.
It sounded like me a few weeks ago.
Yeah. And to think about the story, how they never rested on their laurels. And I think that's very important, because I think this district has gone through periods of time where we've rested on our laurels and we stagnate. And then we have to kind of gather the troops and pick it up again. But by that point, we're already behind a little bit. And I think this gives us a chance to not only repair that kind of philosophy and how we approach education, but keep, like they say in New York, Excelsior, keep moving forward and upward. They were, once they figured out, let's do a mail-in service for DVDs, that wasn't good enough for them. Then they figured out a way, let's do a streaming service. That wasn't good enough for them. Then they said, let's invent our own content. There's some content out there, but we can invent our own content. So then they started producing their own movies and series and all that. And it'll be interesting to see what comes next. But it's to have that philosophy, it's not good enough. Whatever we're not doing right now, it's not good enough. We have to keep pushing ourselves. Is going to be an excellent way, I think, for both this board, the students, the faculty, and this focus group to tackle this issue. And to look at what there are wonderful things going on in the district. It doesn't mean any of those things will be sacrificed in this process. It's how we can augment everything. It's how we can make it better. We can make it better. And how are we going to do that? So I look forward for the next couple of months to come around and get going on this. Thank you.
Dr. Bregy, I want to say thank you for this comprehensive presentation. I know it's the beginning of a complicated and a lot of moving parts to this process. I'm very excited, and I appreciate how much thought you put into this presentation. It definitely shows. I want to reiterate to the community, whoever's watching and listening, that this is really our first time talking about this, because this weekend, in fact, I was approached by a few people and said, we understand you've already made a decision, and I was quite taken by that because we haven't, and I really, I think today shows that the response that I gave on Sunday was authentic. And so this is, the five of us are part of this process, but definitely the process doesn't begin or end with us. We are going to capture, hopefully, the information that comes back from the committee and take everything into account, because everything's at play here. And so it is, I think the five of us are committed to the best options so that we move our district forward. So thank you for this again. I wanted to just, I did have a question about how many members, and I just, by looking at this, it didn't kind of quite, how many members do you anticipate having in the committee? 20?
Approximately
I'm sorry.
20.
And so you're locked into that number?
We feel like there's so much work to do within the next couple of months that we really want to make sure that that we have a really productive and dynamic team, which is a conversation that we had about the number. But we also want to make sure, though, that we have these focus groups so that it may not be a working member on the actual team, but it's really casting a wide net when it comes to input from our community from all over.
Okay, and then my other question was going to be, these 20 community members are going to be meeting, and I really appreciate that you were aggressive enough to come up with the meeting times and the meeting dates on the back of that application, which I think is really, really good, because if anyone was looking to volunteer, they should look at those dates and consider their calendars. But my question was going to be about the committee members. Yes, will there be communication to the general community as you go through that process of meeting? Because I'm imagining there'll be milestones across.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We might as well move Ms. Gertie's office downstairs, because she's been involved from the very beginning of this, and we definitely, it's really important to capture. This is, we have a story here. We have an opportunity to do some really innovative work, and we want to be able to capture that from the very beginning when we're not sure what the end is going to be.
Great. Well, thank you, and I wish you luck, and we'll be part of that process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bregy, for this. It's a great way to start fixating our eyeballs on all this. Yeah. Thank you. So everything in life is full of possibilities, but some things are finite. We only have 5 campuses, right? So you're going to look within the 4 K-8s.
Correct.
Right. So what's going to drive this decision, obviously, is the number of people that we're going to be able to house and where and what, right?
Right.
And the campuses. Will you be talking to the city about traffic patterns, about demographics? Because some schools, literally their proximity to traffic lights, to traffic patterns, to residential is very different from school to school.
I'm glad that you asked that. Not only will we be doing some traffic studies, because it's really important to know how this is going to, any type of configuration is going to impact a neighborhood. So, and while that's important, it's also important to get, information from the people that live in the area. And so it is, this is the reason I gave you this kind of a long explanation is because, if that's not your thing, like, traffic studies and, also instruction, I mean, it's goes all over the place. But that's the kind of thing that we're going to spend a lot of time on to get that data.
So I don't know if it was when Mr. Spitz and I was at a liaison meeting or Mr. Goldstein and I, but you were there. And the mayor and Councilmember Mirisch didn't know we were really upon this discussion. They got this, wow, this looked like, wow, you guys are talking about reconfiguration in a serious way. We said yes. So obviously we'll be having more liaison meetings. I would like to keep them updated so that they don't have deer in the headlights ever again. I don't want them to read about it in the newspapers, although that's a great place to read it. To the newspapers that are here today, thank you for reporting. But nevertheless, it should come from us because they're going to have questions. And I think we reassured them that there would be no huge cataclysmic changes. Everything would be rolled out judiciously to the community and all the stakeholders. So the other thing I wanted is the city has a lot of resources with not with their commissioners, because their commissioners are also, many of them lay people and they're community volunteers and they're wonderful, wonderful volunteers. But they rely on staff. So maybe we could resource some of their traffic studies, their urban planners, They've got a lot of data about what's going on in the city. I would just think maybe there's something we could tap into there so that we would know what's going on at Hawthorne, what's going on at El Rodeo. They also do a lot of, they have a lot of, the police are there helping us with traffic and, and the meter maids and all that stuff. So it's just one thought that maybe that's one sort of way for us to sort of think about this.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. So not only am I in several of those city meetings with the mayor and the council and with staff, but also, I was just at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and that I just think that what that reinforces is, to ask for, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, just to keep that update with as many people as possible.
Right.
I think the key with the communication, and Ms. Skirty and I have talked about this a lot, is it's variety. So it's not just these long newsletters with links that I like to send out. It's going to be video. It's going to be in-person meetings. So that's
very
great.
important that the head of the Chamber of Commerce may run into someone from the council and they can have an intelligent discussion about reconfiguration,
Right.
or a council member with a commissioner. So it's just nice if we could have the kind of ongoing conversations with stakeholders and people who are opinion makers, who are socializing out there, working, volunteering, things like that.
That's a great idea.
The last thing I want to say to you is that there's actually, when you talk about Netflix and Blockbuster, there's actually something new happening, which just happened in my own household. My husband, after 1 or 2 years of pleading with me to get rid of DirecTV, I came home one day and all the boxes are gone. So now everything's on Apple TV or Roku. Everything's streaming. Yeah. It took me, a month now to figure out these dumb remotes and streaming and, whatever, but I got it. So apparently DirecTV is now trying to do streaming themselves. So basically all these boxes, these DirecTV boxes are gone. People are going to stop using them. People driving these DirecTV trucks are unfortunately not going to really have jobs. So I don't know what happens to people, so even that is changing. Everything is changing so quickly. So clearly we have to sort of not necessarily change, but kind of go with the times and figure out what's best for our kids, best for our population, our community, and give them the most with what we have. So I'm all for this. I guess what we have to do is figure out how to get the most out of what we have. We have 4 school sites, and we're going to have to figure out, in a way, we have to think big, but we also have to be bean counters. We have to kind of do what accountants do, right, Mel? We've got to kind of use, be bean counters. We have to think small, but think very big almost at the same time.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Mr.
Thank you.
Corbetoff?
Yeah.
Since you brought up Netflix, and it keeps on coming up for some
Yeah.
reason, I wonder who has stock here in them, but
I know,
anyway.
Not me.
Not me.
I don't know if Dr. Bregy knows this, but Ted Sarandos, one of the content executives for Netflix.
Went to Beverly?
His son graduated from Beverly. He sent his
Wow.
children to this school district. Just a point of information.
Okay, and if you would like to contact us, you can reach me at mbreggy@bhusd.org.
Dr. Bregy, I so much appreciate the work that's gone into this. I think it's practical. It's a practical approach. It's a good approach. I think it's an indication of the kind of leadership from a superintendent that we have needed so much in this district for so long. And I thank you for that. I think your approach is right. I think that the theory of having a committee of approximately 20, and this is very important, mixed stakeholder participants. I think that obviously we want staff members, obviously we want parents, community leaders. I have a feeling from what I've heard in town that once this is announced that that you're seeking applicants for this kind of a committee, if the announcement is effective in the community, I have a feeling that you're going to be inundated with applicants. And that's not a bad thing, especially when I look at your, at the depth of your application form, because what you're going to be faced with is, I think, an enormous pile of applicants, and you're going to have the opportunity to look at their backgrounds and their interests and their resumes, their strengths, and have the opportunity to do a wonderful job of putting together a really smart committee. And I think that that's going to be one of your first responsibilities, big responsibility. And I think it's exciting. I think, I hope that you will cast a wide net, because if you don't, I think there are going to be a lot of people in town who are going to say, why wasn't I invited? I'm very interested in this. And in fact, when you do get inundated, you're going to have to deal with some people that won't be selected, and they won't feel good about that.
Right.
But they have to understand that you're whittling it down to about 20 people, and that you, of necessity, had to develop a committee with diversion on it. And I think that if it's explained right, people will understand. They'll have to understand. I like the time schedule. It's tight and it's challenging, but it's right. And I think you got the right idea. It's the right way to go, and I'm very pleased about it.
Thanks. I also want to reach out just to my team because I am so fortunate. This is the type of thing kind of on top of our day-to-day job. So my team that's available during weekends and after 6 o'clock, that's, we have the right team with the right passion and energy. And so I just want to thank everybody on the cabinet for assisting.
Another thought, if I may add. I'm sure that you are going to be wanting from day one, and this is day one, to get an explanation out to the community, to introduce this to the community, and then as you can, frequent updates to the community. I
Certainly.
think that that's really the best way to
You mean like
get
PACE emails?
get community support.
You mean like email updates? Like we send out emails?
I mean news releases
Yeah, like press, but out in email form.
in that form, and in press releases to the newspapers.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
And I would just like to add, as my colleagues flanking both sides of me pointed out but failed to mention, is we got to ditch the train tunnel as the cover for this.
All right. I knew somebody was going to go there. That it's not the tunnel.
We're not against mass transit. We support mass transit, just not under the high school, right? That's what we like to say, and it's
this
true.
is a pretty nice looking tunnel.
So we support the purple line anywhere under somewhere else, just not the high school.
I was going to make it purple, but I didn't.
Doesn't it say exit to athletic field here? All right.
Okay, any further comment? Thank you, Dr. Bregy. That brings us to the consent.